Welcome back. You're watching Your World at 10. Now, the last few months have seen a sharp surge in worker protests in plants across the country. In Tamil Nadu, workers at Hyundai, MRF and Nokia went on protest. And last month, a senior HR executive at Precol died after having been attacked by workers. Now, work at the Gurgaon-Manesar auto belt of Haryana has come to a halt following the death of a worker in alleged police firing. And it's not just blue-collar workers who've been aggressively asserting their rights or protesting and striking. Pilots at two of India's biggest airlines, Jet and Air India, went on strike on separate occasions last month. So what's led to this situation of increased or seemingly increased worker protests, whether they're blue-collar or white-collar? Joining us to answer that are Jayant Davar, the Vice President of the Auto Component Manufacturers Association, or ACMA, Daksha Bakshi, she's Executive Director at law firm Khaitan and Company, and Professor Sharid Bhaumik, he's the Dean of the School of Management and Labour Studies at the Tara Institute of Social Studies, or TIS as it's known. Well, gentlemen, Daksha, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Before I come to any one of you with questions, here are two quick comments I'd like you to listen in from the managements of Rico Auto and Sona Koyo, both affected by this current strike which has turned violent in Haryana.
हमारा इनसे अपील ये है, अपने बार बार नोटिस बोर्ड में अपील लगाई है, पेपर में पब्लिश किया है कि भाई हड़ताल प्रोहिबिट हो गई है, आप तुरंत ड्यूटी पे रिपोर्ट करें और आपका केस कोर्ट में जा चुका है, उसमें जो भी वहाँ पे कोर्ट डिसीजन देगा वो सबको मान्य है.
Well, I don't believe things are going to worsen. I don't think things are going to get bad. I think these units, two particular units, need to sort out their issues with their workforce. I don't think the other units have any issues with the workforce. Therefore, I don't think it's a widespread issue.
All right, those were voices in from Rico Auto and Sona Koyo, both affected parties in this strike ongoing in the Haryana industrial belt. Jayant Davar, I'd like to come to you first. What's going on? Is this a widespread malaise? We've seen repeated worker protests through the beginning of this year. What do you diagnose as the real reason behind what's going on right now?
Well, for one, I disagree with what Surinder said, that it's limited to one or two companies. I think it's much more widespread. In fact, we've been fighting this menace in terms of how we've been talking to the government for the last, not 15 days, but over 3.5 months now. We've been telling them that the situation in this entire belt is worsening as we speak. You're right to a certain extent when you say that, is this a wider problem? Yes, it is. It's on account of aspirations. But why is it different now, and why is it different now in a belt of Gurgaon? I personally believe it's on account of the political scenario that's existed here in the last couple of months, where there were elections that were announced. Politically motivated people came in, thought this was the best way to get their own publicity in, got the help of trade unions, and started some kind of a movement in which they said that we will feed the aspirations of normal people. Now, if you look at this belt, and I need to make some people understand this, Haryana as a state is the most prosperous in the country when it comes to auto. More than 50% of the autos, whether it's cars or motorcycles, are produced in this state. More than 250 auto component manufacturers operate in this area. And the one thing that also stands out is that the salaries paid out to people in this area stand out as benchmark for the rest of the country. So this is not people who are paid less than normal wages or even normal wages or slightly higher than normal wages.
All right,
these are people who get possibly 10 times as much.
Jayant, I get the point that you're making, but the question begs to be asked, and Professor Bhaumik, I'd like your response to this. One could say it could be, some of these protests could come down to changing socio-economic reasons in one region or politicization in another region. For instance, the attack that happened on an HR executive at the Precol plant, for the factory was also said to be political in some fashion. But this has happened recurringly over the course of the last 8, 9, 10 months. We've had strikes at Hyundai, MRF, Nokia. Professor Bhaumik, do you think there is an underlying economic reason to this that we all seem to be missing?
Well, I don't know about the economic reason, but there's the other underlying reason, especially when we are talking about Gurgaon and Haryana, is that at least this is what I have studied, which I find, that there are two parties in it. One is that the state government has been excessively oppressive on any section of the workers who have been protesting. It started with the Honda factory, which was, I think, televised also, the way the police brutality there. Second thing you can also see in most of these cases, including Jet Air and all which you mentioned earlier, was this whole apathy or hostility of managements for workers to form unions. I think in RICO that is the case. So, and it happened in Jet Air also. Union leaders are being victimized. I don't know what we are doing. We are going back to the earlier pre-industrial state. Today when I talk to my students, I talk to others, the ILO and others, they talk about decent work. The Constitution guarantees people the right to freedom of association. Forming a trade union is their right. Or, if I look at the conditions in Europe, say in Germany and other places, where trade unions play an important role and the employers encourage trade unions. Now, many times, if you're going to suppress trade unions, the workers have no way of venting out their problems.
All right, let me bring... Okay, point taken. Daksha, is that what you see when you sit across tables with companies and their labor representatives, that there is a lot of apathy? Would those be the reasons that you would ascribe to this increase in action that we've seen in the last 6-8 months?
I would say that is at least partly the reason.
Okay.
A lot of times, Indian companies aren't really geared up to doing a good amount of educating work with the employees.
But why would you say that, Daksha? Sorry to interrupt you, but why would you say that? We've had a healthy history and sometimes unhealthy, as Mumbai's Mill District, bears witness, of great amount of union action in this country. So to say that companies are not aware or not fully equipped to understand union representation would seem incorrect.
No, I would agree with you to one extent. Yes, in textile industry we had a lot of unionization, and because of what happened due to the overactiveness of unions, we have also witnessed what happened to that industry, and therefore there was a kind of a backlash on that, or a retrievement by the workers from getting away from trade unions. But at the same time, our labor laws do permit, as Professor Bhaumik just mentioned, and the Constitution permits the trade unions. And I think there is a need to have a healthy relationship between trade unions and companies. And you were mentioning earlier on about an economic reason, and I think there is some amount of economic reason that we can actually see here. I'm not necessarily talking about a particular area or region of the country which can be identified with the economic reason, but there certainly is a substantial divide, economic divide, between certain types of workers and other types of workers, especially the unorganized labor in this country does have a lot to be protected for, and does have a long way to go before they can be said to have a good economic condition.
All right, let me take that back to Jayant Davar, because I know that the auto component industry needs to look for urgent solutions to this. Jayant, whether it's politicization or it is economic aspiration, which is not bad if workers aspire for higher salaries and they want to sit across a negotiating table to demand that, that's not bad. What is the solution that your industry is looking for to stop this? Because many companies are involved or hurt by this current action.
Okay, let's put it a little differently. One, Professor Bhaumik spoke about Europe. Why is it then that these European companies who seem to do exceedingly well in Europe and other developed countries are the companies that actually get hit here? If you look at Hyundai, you spoke about Nokia, you spoke about Honda. These are companies who have establishments all around the world. And why is it that they only suffer in India? These are also companies that possibly pay the best. So when you're looking at aspirations, I don't think it's got to do with economic things. I see companies which pay better seem to get the worst scenario from the employees.
So you're saying it's down to politicization. Are you saying, Jayant, that it's down to politicization?
It is politicization, of course.
So what is the solution,
I'm not going to take away the fact that there is apathy.
What is the solution to this then? We're running a little short of time, so I'm going to ask you quickly, what do you think is the solution? What's going to help
I want to speak also now on something.
Sure. Professor Bhaumik, I'll come to you, but Jayant, I want your quick last word on this.
solution, according to me, is we need labor reforms. We need companies to, there are companies who want to pay better, but they say we don't have the freedom to be able to say anything in case somebody doesn't work. These 16 people at RICO who were suspended were union people who said we will not work because we've been labor office bearers.
All right. Let me take that back to Professor Bhaumik. Professor Bhaumik, how can everything end up at the doorstep of the broader issue of labor reforms? Or is it truly that you need a hire and fire policy to be able to treat labor with a little more respect?
Well, no, I don't agree with that, but I would just say one thing. When I go back to the European condition, that why does it work in Europe and why does not work in India? Now, we also, see, even from TIS, my own school, we are running courses for trade unionists. This is funded by ILO because we want a new group of trade unionists to come up who are responsible and things like that. But the other part of it, when I look at, because we've got a lot of connections with the European trade unions, and if I look at the international unions who enter into agreements with the MNCs, at the international level, most of them get frustrated when they come to India, and it's not just because of labor, it's also because of the attitude of the management. I don't want to name these companies, but there are places where the international union, whether it is the IUF, whether it is UNI, whether it's any of these things, or International Metal Workers Federation, now when they go into, let's say with a German company, they'll go into some automobile company, they have an agreement about decent work, then you find that it's being violated in India. And then when it says that why is it not working in India and why is it working elsewhere? Now the thing is very clear to see.
All right, last word. Gentlemen, I'm entirely out of time. I'm going to have to give the last word to the lady on the panel. Daksha, your last word on that. Do you believe that when managements, that's foreign managements or MNC managements, come to India, they tend to take the labor situation for granted? Or would you believe, like Jayant pointed out, that this does end up at the doorstep of the requirement for more labor reforms? Companies can only treat labor with more respect if they have the ability to hire and fire them.
Well, you're going to be surprised with my answer because I'm going to say it's a mix of both.
Okay.
There are people who do what Mr. Professor Bhaumik said, and I also see what Jayant said. But what I do believe is the need of the day is very reasonable labor reforms, not completely the other way around of hire and fire policy, but at least there has to be something in relation to productivity-related policies and permission to the companies, to the employers, to be able to get rid of those people who have been given notices, who have been told that they are not productive enough, they've been provided training, they've been given opportunities to improve themselves, they've been given everything, and yet they do not improve. So that is required. At the same time, I also feel that there needs to be some sort of an economic correlation between performance and what people get. They need to be able to see that they are creating wealth for themselves. And I think here, Mr. Narayan Murthy's example, what he gave to his drivers and his, other small employees like peons and office boys, giving shares in the company has really created a lot of well-being feeling amongst the rank and file of employees and the management. And I think that's the kind of model that needs to be replicated. What we have in information technology can certainly be replicated with modification across all the industries. And I don't see any reason why that should not improve.
Daksha, I'm sorry, we're going to have to end it here. We're entirely out of time. But you have brought up a point that we wanted to bring up in this discussion, and that is that how come the IT and BPO industry, which are so people heavy, don't seem to be facing the same problem as many manufacturing companies seem to through the course of this year. And it's probably, as you pointed out, they're perceived to be sharing wealth a lot more than manufacturing. Jayant Davar, Professor Sharad Bhaumik and Daksha Bakshi, thank you very much for joining us on Your World at 10.